guys? Welcome to Rack Studios. We're down here in Tampa, Florida. Me and my boy Mike G. We got Megan on, and we are going to talk about some yoga, and then we'll talk about a little bit of fitness and why yoga is important when you get older. Because I'm an old man and Mike's a young man. So we got to hit on that. Megan, how are you doing today?
I'm doing really well. How are you guys doing?
Oh yeah, I'm vertical. Mike, what about you, bro?
Not bad. No, not bad. We've been grinding all day, but we're getting there. But I do want to learn some yoga. You're like a master yoga. I'm like, what the hell's going on there?
Yeah, it definitely is a practice that evolves over a long period of time.
And a little bit of flexibility doesn't hurt.
Yeah, a little bit. A little bit does go a long way with yoga.
All right, so Megan, I got a question for you. Where do you hail from? Where are you originally from?
I'm originally from Florida.
Okay, what part?
I grew up in Cape Coral, so about 2 hours south of Tampa. I went to Cape Coral High School, and I'm a graduate of the University of Florida.
Oh, that's cool. Oh,
go Gators.
Because I'm a Noel. That's cool. I love Noels. That's all right. That's all right. So let me ask you a question. So you got into fitness. So did you start out in yoga, or did you start out in gymnastics or something else? And then you kind of just migrated over time into yoga. So what's your history?
Well, I'm here to tell you I really wish I would have started in gymnastics. That would have made the rest of this a lot easier if I would have just been a gymnast as a kid. But no, I actually started in dance when I was younger. And then my mom practiced yoga even when I was growing up. So she would take yoga classes, and it wasn't quite as open at that time. There weren't as many classes as there are now, but she really gave me my introduction to it. And by the time I got to college, I was really a high achieving person and had a lot of stress. So I really got recommended by the University of Florida Student Health Center to please start taking yoga so that I could decompress a little bit. Hey. So really, that was where I got my start. I already kind of had the physical foundation of my dance background, but I came to it for the stress relief and sort of the more subtle benefits, I guess, the internal benefits rather than the external benefits.
Yeah, so who would have thought a bunch of hippies in the 70s and late 60s would have ever thought about yoga becoming like the thing? So, as you talk about the history of yoga, so some people say it's from India, and some parts of India. Some people, think it's from the Orient. But when you look at it, it's all about mind, the body, and spirit. So which one of the platforms do you think, that you are you versed across the whole plethora of different yoga styles? Because I know there's yin and there's yang. There's just so much. So what's the best version of you that you think that you're your strong suit in the yoga world?
So I definitely practiced a style that is from Northern India when I very first began practicing. I started my teacher training with hot yoga, which typically hails from a little bit of a different part of India than we think of the vinyasa or the flow classes coming from. So even you're absolutely right. Even within yoga, there are different modalities that you can explore. Some are newer than others. Some are older. And it just kind of depends on what you're seeking. I think everyone can find something in the kind of plethora of offerings that are now available to us through yoga, that they can find something that really resonates with them, whether it's more spiritual, whether it's more physical. There are so many different lineages that are coming from different viewpoints, let's say, and different philosophies, that I think that everyone can find something they really resonate with. And so for me, it's kind of been an evolving practice of going to several different teacher trainings from hot yoga, then also definitely studied the vinyasa practice, so a more flowing style physically. And all of that is really based on the philosophy of Patanjali, which it's a group of aphorisms that sort of explain how to practice and why we want to practice.
I'm just laughing because the look on Mike's face as you're dropping all that content. Mike's like, what the hell? Hey, Mike, what you got, man?
I mean, the lingo, it's like city. I mean, I respect it all. It's great. Yoga's a thing. I did it back in the day. I need to get back on it again, but I never heard of this type of, dialects or, lingo.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's a really good point, actually, Mike, because a lot of people who are new to yoga, they get a little intimidated because it does seem like a different language. And it is in a way. A lot of it comes from Sanskrit. So we're borrowing some of the words, even as we often badly translate them into English and Americanisms. So I think that's a very common thing, to be a little bit distanced by the language aspect of it. So really at our studio, what we try to do is offer that great jumping off point for people so that they can feel comfortable and sort of take away some of the, I guess, the barriers of the levels of practice, and really the barriers of saying, like, you have to be aware of all of these things as a prerequisite before you come to the practice. Because everybody needs the practice to meet them where they are.
Oh yeah, I noticed that during COVID, the amount of influencers in yoga grew during the pandemic, and so it became a big viral thing that people were doing it. I have the mirror, the Lululemon mirror at home.
Yeah.
So I was doing that, which is actually a really good product. My sister got it for me. It's a really good product. But as I look at it as myself getting into it in my late 50s here, I looked at, when you look at Phil Jackson with the Chicago Bulls, when they started going through meditation and started, finding them, just trying to find their chi. I found out that, yoga is a relaxing thing, but it takes time. So moderately, for someone that doesn't really know, when they first start, it's not a quick fix. So I'm just going to tell you straight from personal experience, it's not a quick fix. So normally, when do you see a person start kind of seeing major results? Just kind of like, when people go on diets and everything else, when they're working out and nutrition, when do people start kind of seeing the effects of when they start their yoga program? So it's not a hurry and get done program.
Right. And that's sort of the tricky thing about yoga is it happens really organically. When you start, just like you said, you might feel a little uncomfortable. A lot of people feel like this is so different, and maybe people are questioning them, like, what is this thing you're doing? Is it a new religion? Are you chanting? What does it look like all those kinds of things? Are you listening to weird music?
Yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry. Yeah, Kurt. Yeah, go ahead.
So really, I think what most people find is, if they dedicate themselves, even if they're just going to do it as a resolution, or because their doctor recommended that they do something kind of similar to my story, even if they just commit themselves to it for, let's say, 30 days, the benefits of it start to manifest a little organically. So it might not be the things they anticipated happening, but they will start to see those effects. Like maybe they want to start eating healthier because they can't imagine leaving from a yoga class and going to have a cheeseburger. Or they discover that through the coaching of the breath work and learning more about their breathing, when they're sitting in traffic and they're feeling stressed, all of a sudden they start to use some of those techniques that their teacher taught them in their yoga class. And those things kind of happen organically, a little bit more than other true fitness modalities. So the really funny thing about yoga is when we talk about it in terms of a fitness platform, really at the end of the day, in the philosophical sense, what we want to eventually do is let go of our attachment to the outcomes of any of it. And I think when we do that, we don't go into it saying, here's what I see happening, and if that's not what happens, I'm out. We say, I'm just going to stay in the practice. It's staying in the practice that's going to allow me to know the benefits. They might even be better than I could have ever imagined. I'm just not going to get attached to a preconceived idea of what they're going to be.
Megan, one thing that's just shocking me is that the mental health issues that we have in America prior to, and I do an analysis, I'm almost 58. So I do an analysis kind of from like the 70s to now. And over in history of the United States, and I can historian, that we've used different things, medication. So like the 70s were like a little bit of fitness and then self-medication. 80s were very heavily into self-medication, either be it alcohol or be it whatever. And as a society, a Western society, and you look at countries in the Far East, and you wonder why they're, or Central Asia, why they're living longer, why they're more healthier. And a lot of it has to do with just mindset and body. And, when we talk about all this in America about people saying that, oh, we have all these mental health going on, all the stress going on, because we have a fast-paced lifestyle. It's ironic that we don't slow down and like implement yoga into some of the jobs that we have, like a break at the office. You know what I'm saying, Mike?
Mm-hmm.
We don't take the time, even in the military. And I will tell you, the military would probably be the poster child in these yoga classes. And it's just like our society doesn't deem it as an important part of our mental health, but yet we would rather medicate than try to do the organic way of getting healthy. So I'm sure you've had a lot of students come to you that have had a lot of different issues, and yoga's kind of helped them through their trials and tribulations, especially after COVID. So, as your experiences in doing yoga, have you seen like how strong the benefits are, not just for you personally, but for the others that are around you?
Yeah. And I think you really hit on a very interesting topic, because I would say that we're starting to see that mindfulness, which is, obviously something that exists in yoga thousands of years now, is something that in kind of our modern vernacular, a lot of mental health advocates are saying, if you could implement one thing in your day, a mindfulness practice might be a good thing that you could invite into it. And that's really something that's so in the fabric of yoga that I do think they go really well hand in hand. And that's truly the most rewarding part of being a yoga teacher, is when someone says that just coming and being able to be in the space, no matter, what happens, like from the physical standpoint, just makes them feel lighter, or sets their day up for a great tone, or sets their week up on the right foot. I think that's really the thing, because that little aspect of whether it's, making an appointment to spend an hour just for yourself, or if it is kind of branching off into doing some more mindfulness things like meditations, gratitude journaling, breath work, all of those are very, very powerful tools for how to manage everything that we're going through every day, all the stress, again, the collective experience of the pandemic, and, all of the competing social media, commercialism, all of those kinds of messages that we're facing all of the time. Most of us are pretty overwhelmed. So, mindfulness as just a basic practice, that's something that definitely you can start to tease out of any of your yoga classes, no matter how much they're held, maybe in a gym setting, a community center setting, a school setting, all of those great tools, great tools. I love that they bring yoga into a lot of schools now, because I think that's such a valuable thing to teach kids. Just like you're saying, over the years, we, the three of us, probably didn't get the opportunity to say, before we take this test, we're going to sit down and have a few moments to collect ourselves, or to get up and move around for a minute. I mean, you guys are men, so maybe as little boys, sitting still would have been hard throughout a whole day. No, Mike's saying no.
Yeah, Mike. Hey, Matthew, Mike gonna get him some sleep. He knows he gonna take his nap. Now me, ADD all day long.
Yeah, so I have 3 kids, and I know that's one of the things that, it's so important for me to, even learning to be a parent of 3 kids, it's really, really helped me. Moments where, as a young parent, I study myself, I might fly off the handle, or, feel all of that overwhelm and that stress. sometimes that yoga practice just starts to give you those little tools to be more mindful about things. And from a true inner study period, like just take a moment, sit back, notice why you reacted that way, and then see, how did that feel? Did it feel good? Did it feel like maybe you want a second shot at it? It's not a right or wrong dogmatic approach, which is the other thing I really love. It's just those seeds of mindfulness, self-study, giving some time back to yourself, because then you're more present.
Oh yeah. Hey, so go ahead, Mike, because you wanted to touch on the school piece.
Oh no, my son, he does yoga at school now, and it's surprising. I mean, he likes it. I'm like, that's cool. But like you said, so I have a question.
Yeah.
I used to do yoga. I used to work out, come into yoga. Why was I running out of energy in like 15 minutes? Because we would do like half-hour yoga class, but I would only last 15 minutes, and I'd be. Is it because of the movement that we really don't move our bodies like that every day?
Right. No, that's a very good point. So if we think about the fact that a lot of the movements that are inherent in our yoga practice are not part of our activities of daily living. So some sports kind of and workouts mimic some of our activities of daily living a little bit better. Or we played those things younger, and that throwing mechanism or rowing or things like that are going to kind of mimic things we're familiar with. I know when I was at Thanksgiving this last year, I was talking to my brother-in-law about doing standing balance work. And he was talking about how hard it is for him because the muscles of like his calves and his feet and everything start to get really tired when he does tree pose. And that's a really good point, because we usually are wearing shoes a lot, especially in our exercising. So just the intrinsic muscles in your feet, for being barefoot, weight bearing on your hands. I mean, how often have you really, besides just doing like, 3 sets of 10 push-ups or things like that at the gym, you're probably not going full weight bearing on your hand for half an hour at a time, or, intermittently. Right. So you have to work back up to it, because it can feel really exhausting at first. And you do develop it quickly. But I know after I had my daughter and I was coming back to the practice and I had to take that time off, when I started to come back, my hands and my wrists, for the first time in just absolutely years, because I have a big gap between my second and third child, I was like, oh, wow, I really understand exactly what you're saying, Mike, what it feels like to go into that tabletop position and like have my wrists be getting fatigued.
Oh, yeah. I know personally.
Yeah. It's a lot of stuff we don't necessarily use. And that's why it's so good too. Number one, you don't at all look like your age, Vince. So just be super confident in that. But that whole up and down off the floor thing, those are the kinds of things we don't want to lose as we get older, right? We want to be able to get on the floor and play with our kids, and then confidently be able to get back up off the floor without holding on to furniture. So, So from a physical standpoint, that it really is like a game changer for kind of all of those ranges of motion we don't normally use, right? We're sitting in the car, we're sitting at our desk, we're, maybe we run or walk or do things like that. But, what yoga gives us is maybe something that will age with us in a way that's very safe for our joints, but at the same time is going to, challenge our balance, our proprioception. It's going to keep us honed in on those flexibility aspects that we lose over time too, just from the aging process.
Oh yeah, because there's a couple poses there. I just know for a fact that they're very challenging. And I go, oh, and then, it's the child pose. They go, oh, we're going to child pose is no problem. Yeah, okay. Yeah, it's wear and tear on the body. And I think a lot of times is that I look at my football players right now, and they think I'm joking all the time when I say, look, man, I tell you now, start yoga now. While you're playing ball, in the off season, just, go to yoga all summer, just do yoga. And they look at me like, come on, Coach Bugs. Because what I know now I wish I'd have known when I was playing sports back when I was flexible, because I did martial arts my whole career. So I was flexible all the way up to probably 37, because I did martial arts from a teenager all the way till about 37, taekwondo, jiu-jitsu. And so I realized my flexibility because of all the stretching we had to do prior to doing the movements. And so I think about it now that I'm sitting in yoga and I look at the importance of it, the breathing, and I'll be the first to admit, when we get to the point where we get to meditate, it's my favorite moment, because I've already been through all things. From a mental health standpoint, we got a lot of people, they'll watch this later. What advice do you give people that are really struggling? They have toxic leadership at their office, or they're in a bad relationship, and they all wrap these things into depression. So what is like one of the important things that you could give someone to say why yoga is important for them to kind of just step back, no matter what your circumstances are, even if you're poor, or low income, struggling? Why is yoga such an important factor in the human mindset?
Well, the interesting part about, I think yoga, as opposed to a lot of other sports and fitness kinds of pursuits that we might have, is that your socioeconomic class just really doesn't play into it as much at all. In fact, one of the most beautiful aspects of our yoga practice is, again, coming back to the idea of mindfulness, but it is really a devotional. So it's saying, even as you're doing activities that, might be considered very humble activities, you're having the mindfulness of you're doing it for something bigger than yourself. So from the philosophical standpoint, even if you start at that place and just in your mind, when you're sweeping the floor, doing the dishes, or you get to have 5 minutes to yourself to be in child's pose or pray, and you're saying, this time I'm doing it for myself, but I'm also offering it up for the greater collective, because when I'm at my best and when I'm in touch with what makes me feel good, I can be my best for other people and for the world as a whole. If we could all have a little bit more of an opportunity to do that. And in the yoga philosophy, it's called bhakti, or the yoga of devotion. And it's really seen as the most accessible form of yoga that you could practice, because we can do that all the time, no matter what else we have going on. Even if you're playing football, a lot of football players embody that already, because, right, they're protecting the person next to them, or they're doing this for the spirit of the team. So it's not that foreign of a concept for us as Americans that, might be in a very service-based kind of either industry or sport, or just in our communities. But sometimes it just goes that one step deeper with our yoga practice, because even when we get that opportunity and we're saying, I'm going to do this time for myself, but I know that as I'm practicing, I'm actually doing it for the greater whole, because the better I am, the better we will all be. I think that's a really good way to start. Even if you just, again, start with that mindfulness practice. There are so many videos available now. If you want to do a physical practice, start with the beginner, with the chair yoga videos on YouTube or streaming services. There are so many great ones. So start with something that's going to support you so that you'll stay in it longer, right?
Right,
don't jump to handstands straight away.
Oh, no. Well, let me ask you this real quick then. In the 70s, like most of the hippies or people that were, kind of destitute, just hanging out, if you were in Seattle or Los Angeles, my aunt lived in Los Angeles, you'd see the guys walking around in all the gauze clothing, and they'd be at the beach. I try to ask myself, and I said I never figured out, how did yoga become considered such a high income event into some people's perspective, when it actually the origin of it was not that. And it seems like, when people in their perception, when you bring up the term yoga, why do people default to this? Oh, you got to be rich to do yoga. And I go, no, that's not true. Because it actually, if you look at the history of it, of the societies in India, a lot of people in India aren't rich, and they use yoga on a regular basis. But go ahead.
Right. No, I mean, I think that's a really good point. And this is probably like, we could do a whole other podcast on this topic, but I definitely agree with the fact that if you're looking at any Eastern origin sorts of philosophies, when we start to work them through our capitalism model in America, it tends to get a little
murky.
So yes, yeah, like why do yoga pants cost $120?
Oh, you've been watching Chris Rock, don't you?
Yeah, and like, do you really have to wear those to practice yoga? No. Don't wait until you have those things. Like, don't wait until you can afford those luxury items to start the practice. It can be a really simple, it can really literally just be every time that I sit in my car in the driveway before I leave to go somewhere, I'm going to commit to 3 minutes of making my inhale equal to my exhale. I'm going to count to 4 on the inhale. I'm going to count to 4 on the exhale. Boom, you're doing yoga. That's pranayama, breath control. So that could be one way. And that's the other thing about yoga that's really nice when you start to study philosophy is there's, just like I mentioned, the devotion, there are all these little paths and inroads into yoga. It doesn't say, oh, you have to practice the physical practice, which is called asana. You don't have to practice that to be doing yoga. You could almost omit that, or maybe do, like 2 poses, or just do enough to make you sit comfortably in meditation, or sit comfortably on the floor, in other words. And then you could just do study. You could read the different texts about yoga to learn more. You could practice the devotional aspect. You could practice the breathwork aspect. There are so many different ways to get into it. And I think that's the other really nice thing. And obviously meditation right now is something that, people are really trying to figure out how to get into. So anything that's going to help you not make your mind be silent, because we know that's not possible, but to hone your focus down to a singular focus, that is the inroads to your meditation practice. And a lot of times yoga is a really strong way to hone yourself down to that physical kind of like, okay, now I'm tired, now I'm centered, now I can find that single focus.
Go ahead, Mike, because you need all of that right now.
I mean, she got me open right now. I don't like with the lingo, the text, and the structure. It's like yoga's the tree, and everything else is the root underneath it. So that's what I got out of it. So that's thank you. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Well, amazing that I'm doing a good job, because that is exactly what it's like.
Wow.
Yoga is the tree. Yes. And there are so many different ways that you can kind of make your way into it. It's not only for some people. It's not only for people who can, again, do handstands or practice long physical practices. It's not only for people who have the time to sit and meditate for 2 hours. Obviously, that's not maybe going to be us. We might not have that time in our day. You guys have already mentioned you had a really busy day today. So maybe you're like, okay, man, I still got to do this 2-hour meditation when I get home. It might like kind of get pushed off to the side. So if you have a lot of different choices for kind of like how you're entering into that practice, it's going to fit for a lot of different people. So it's not just going to be for people who are well off or people who have time, a lot of extra time. Anyone can have a yoga practice. Anyone. It's for literally everyone.
All right. So if somebody wants to get in touch with you, Mike, throw a website up. If you're down in the Lithia area, maybe in the Fishhawk area, the Brandon area, or even Plant City, she has her studio in that area. And Mike, you got a website, and then you can pull it up. So anyway, just go on there. Yeah, I think you sign up for classes and you pick whatever variation fits your budget to how you want to do business. And what are some of the good hours and days because hey, your classes fill up fast since you changed locations, girlfriend. So tell me, what was the difference in when you were at the Landing and now you're over at the Fishhawk area? What was the difference?
Yeah, that we've actually been in business for 10 years, which I'm super stoked about. Like, that's been really wonderful. And I do think the move closer to Riverview has been a huge benefit for us because we are able to capture more people. Again, I think that over that 10 years, the way people's homes have been built, it's been more towards the Riverview area and more towards accessing it, from a couple different ways. When we were over at our old location, you pretty much just had to drive down Lithia Pinecrest, which
you got to get down with you.
Can be a little sticky sometimes. So I think this is a great change for us. We have infrared heat, which is really healthy. So we do have infrared heat panels for all of our hot yoga classes, and they are the healthiest rated form of heating a hot yoga studio. So
are they in the floor, or where are these panels at?
Yeah, they're actually in the ceiling. You probably haven't noticed them because they kind of look like the fluorescent lights are there, or the LED lights, but those are actually the heat panels. So if you're like laying there and like looking up, the next time you look up, those actually aren't the lights, they're the heaters.
Oh, the barbecuers. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Now I know.
We just don't turn them on for the class that you normally take, but yeah, they're the heat panels. So it's a really nice, healthy, very kind of ambient heat that's going on in there. It does sometimes feel like the floor gets a little warm, and it's not just like the heat is directly like on your skin. So that's kind of a nice aspect too. But yeah, it has been a great move for us, and I think it was the perfect time. We've been so fortunate to, again, be offering teacher trainings and classes for the past 10 years. And, this is just hopefully kind of like the next phase of our journey.
Oh, yeah. It's a rocking facility. You do a great job. Mike, you got anything before we get out of here, bro?
No, I'm just all baffled. All the lingo and everything. I actually got the concept with the tree and the roots.
You did. Yes, you did. Absolutely. And, people can reach out to me directly, like through Instagram, or even if they text the number at the studio. If you have any questions, I'm always more than happy to talk about yoga. I love it so much. I feel so fortunate to be able to do this as, my life's work. So I'm always happy to talk about it.
That's what I'm talking about. I'll definitely be touching base with you because I have some concepts on some things I'm working on. You can help me out.
Yeah.
Hey, Megan, it has been a blessing, and thank you so much for coming on the show. And we've had a great time. And as me and Mike T always say, come on, Coastal Connection, embrace the power, keep it rolling.